Let's go. You're good.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought the intro played. Did it play?
That's good.
All right. Well, I thought it was going to play, but it didn't play. But at any rate, a special live edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider. It's been a long and winding road where we had so many guys make their way to the studio. It was an unexpected detour.
You muted.
Who muted me? I'm muted.
Your mic is muted on your.
Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Now I'm unmuted. There we go. All right, long and winding road. Long and winding road to the studio. We had an interesting time this spring as a lot of guys made their way to the Michigan Insider studio this spring. We did not expect to have guys make their way to the studio like they did. It was an unexpected journey. And what do we have? 40 guys make their way by. We had long dreamed of having an opportunity to interview guys coming off of visits. And it was an interesting aside. It changed the way we cover recruiting because before, as we followed recruiting, it was kind of an interesting task to try to determine who do we go see on the road. Well, this kind of focused us in a way that we hadn't focused before. It allowed us to really understand who was really most serious about Michigan, who was Michigan most serious about in ways that we didn't really understand before, right? Really get some more insight in ways that we didn't have before into kids and their families. As over 40 guys made their way through the studio, then we made it out on the road as well after that. And then after the fact, we even had guys like today, didn't expect guys to want to make their way to the studio after an official visit. Khary Adams said, hey, man, I want to come by the studio today. So that kind of derailed, kind of what we were going to do today. So kind of a tailspin, a whirlwind affair. We're running around. What are we going to do today? And lo and behold, unexpected detour. What are we going to do today? We put together the studio today to have Khary Adams in studio today, coming off of an official visit. The first time I think we'd ever done that, Brice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
A guy in studio to do a recap of his official visit before he made his way to the airport, right? So really set the day on its ear. And then after that comes the news that we were going to have another guest, another special guest that wanted to talk to us in studio. So that was why I was like, hey, man, suddenly a special edition of the Recruiting Insider. This was not planned. This is impromptu, put it together. Hey, what? Oh, man, you're going to go at 6. Hey, man, we just put this together on the fly. Mm-hmm. So here we are. Let's bring Allen Trieu to the stage. Put him on the screen. Mr. Allen Trieu joins us now. He did not plan to come on the Recruiting Insider, but here he is. Mr. Allen Trieu joins us. How you doing this evening, Allen?
Hey, doing well, guys.
Yeah, and so, this is how it is to cover recruiting, right? You got to be ready to be Johnny on the spot. And here you are, ready to talk about our special guest, a young man that you've been covering for quite some time, who made his way by the studio earlier this spring, one Mr. McHale Blade.
Yeah, like you said, you always got to be ready, and especially June 9th this week. There's lots of spots to be Johnny on right now. So it's been a busy couple weeks, been a busy first week, but excited to talk about McHale because I have covered him for a long time, gotten to know him and his family, and have known his high school coaches for a long time too, since before they got to Simeon. So have this one covered from all sides.
Yeah, absolutely. You have. And the thing that really stands out about me, and when we talk to his coach, Sinque Turner, this will come out, a guy who is beyond being a special talent on the football field, a tremendous student athlete. Every time I saw an interview with you or anyone who interviewed him, Allen, it stuck out to me that you heard him mention the importance of academics in the process of his recruitment as well.
Yeah, and a lot of guys say that. I think when you talk to him, you definitely get the impression that he means it. Very intelligent, well-spoken young man. And you talk to the people in that building at Simeon about how he's approached the classroom. They'll back that up. You talk to his family and you can kind of see where that kind of comes from in how he was brought up. But then also, with last year, him not playing much, being injured, and the way that he stepped up and mentored his teammates, the way he's still doing that. Now they've got a lot of talent coming up the pipe, and he's taken a big role in mentoring those guys and sort of becoming a team leader. And I also think in the way he's handled his recruitment, and he'll speak to this too, of trying to speed this thing up and getting it done so he can get back to what he calls the main thing, which is focusing on his senior season. So really, I think the term box checker gets overused when we talk about scouting and recruiting, but really when you talk about McHale, he does check a lot of these so-called boxes.
All right, so let's bring one of the best coaches in the country to the stage. One of my brothers, one of my guys, introduced me to him years ago. I was on one of my trips to the land, as Levi Bradley calls it, and he said, "Hey, I want you to meet one of my guys, Sam." Levi said, Sinque Turner. We went over to Kenwood Academy at the time, and he said, "Listen, this brother knows how to develop young men, not just players, but young men." Now developing young men over at Simeon. Coach Q joins us now. Sinque Turner, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you. You've developed your fair share of talented student athletes, and the latest in your stable is McHale Blade. What can you tell us about McHale as a young man? What can you tell us about McHale as a player?
I can't tell y'all that I'm overly excited to get to coach him his senior year, man. Let him let all that built up animosity and anger out that he's been having built in all these years being off the field, man. So I'm truly excited to see this guy, go out there and put work in with his teammates this year.
Yeah, they talk about a guy having a switch. You talk to McHale off the field and you hear a young man who is humble. You hear a young man who is soft-spoken, who is eloquent, who is very articulate and bright. But you watch him on that football field, and there's an animal that really comes out, man. He really seems to have that proverbial switch that you like to talk about on the football field.
Yeah, he actually has a switch that don't turn off. So say about a switch with him, it's one that's always on at all times, in the classroom, off the field, on the field, in his training, outside of anything he's doing with us. As a big brother, this guy keeps that switch on all day long, man. So McHale's just an awesome kid, man. That's to be around, and he's a hell of a teammate to his team.
Yeah, you watch kids go through the recruiting process. He's going to talk about his recruiting process here shortly. But as you've watched him kind of navigate what kind of stuck out to you about how him and his parents have handled his recruiting process?
He's been real grounded with the whole thing, man. To have all the things that he had going on, anything that his heart desires, to be as humble as he is in this generation of football, man. It's phenomenal, man. Like I said, like the guys, his character speaks for itself. Like his parent, his dad is a good guy. Mom is a great woman. His older brother is on my staff, and his younger brothers, I'm looking forward to those guys growing up to be just like him, and hopefully one day I get to coach those guys as well. But McHale's just an awesome guy all the way around the board, man. So like I said, him handling this situation, I had plenty of players before. Not everybody handled the situation the way that he handled it. So he's very, very, very humble. He's very appreciative, and and sky's the limit for the kid, man. He's blessed, and he hasn't blocked any of them, man. So like that switch that he doesn't turn on, man, is the reason why he's in the position that he's in right now.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring the man of the hour to the stage, Mr. McHale Blade. So let's bring him up, as he is one of the most heavily recruited players in the country. So, Ben, let's go ahead and put him on the stage and give him the solo cam once he makes it up.
What's going on?
And we will talk to him. So, McHale, First things first. Let's talk a little bit about the recruiting process and how difficult was it to go through it? As you went and visited all the schools, you developed relationships with a lot of coaches. How difficult was it to narrow things down? How difficult was it to manage all the attention as it started flooding in? As talented as you are, you knew you were going to start hearing from a lot of schools.
I mean, for me, it was all about keeping a close relationship with God. And I mean, really, I just kept the main thing. The main thing was playing football and getting better and improving every single day. And I just try not to, overlook too many things and kind of pay attention to certain details. Like, I always just kept the main thing, which is doing what I love and playing football.
So now, as you came in studio, we talked about how when you had like 30 schools and you had to narrow it down, it probably was a little bit easier than it was to narrow it down from like 4 or 5 to the final one. So when it came time to pick that final one, how hard was that?
Honestly, it wasn't too hard because, from day one, Michigan, they've been recruiting me extremely hard, and that school has everything I'm looking for. I had to call, the coaches and let them know that I picked this school over you guys, and that was probably the hardest part because I built a great relationship with those coaches. But at the end of the day, I'm doing what's best for me and my family.
So you just, obviously, you covered on here, so people knew ahead of time what it was going to be, but you just made it clear that you're going blue. So what was it about Michigan that made it clear that being a Wolverine was what it was that you wanted to be?
Well, I mean, they had best of both worlds. Great education. Go blue. They had the great education and the great football piece as well, and they call it D-line U for a reason. So I'm looking to be developed by the best, and Michigan, that's what they are, the best. So
listen, man, we gotta school you on how to do an announcement. So to see your parents, your people want a moment. So yeah. McHale Blade.
Yes, sir.
What school is it going to be for you? Where are you going to spend the next 3 or 4 years of your college career?
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be attending the University of Michigan.
Yeah. See, we got to give you a cinematic moment. We'll clip that for you so you can put it on your social media accounts. All right. So one of the things that really stuck out when we talked to you, when you came in studio, your relationship with Coach Lou, with Lou Esposito, man, that was to me, a real big factor in the decision from the outside looking in. How was it in the grand scheme of things? How big of a factor was that for you?
It was a huge factor. If anything, it was the most important factor because, like I said, since day one in my recruiting process, I'm making my decision based off my relationship with the coach, and I did just that.
Now, you talked a lot about development. You got a chance to not only watch a practice, right? But you also got a chance to see the NFL draft. I mean, how did they talk to you about that, or did they even have to say any words when you watch 2 guys go in the top 15, watch another guy go in the 3rd round?
I mean, what's already understood don't need to be said. You seen the guys that was in the draft. A lot of those guys had that amazing blue on. A lot of those guys were D linemen. So y'all know what it is.
Yeah, man. So other thing that I think needs to be fleshed out. I mean, I can watch you on the football field. People don't need to really be told how much of a beast you are on the field. But I think they don't really know how much of a student athlete you are. And I think they might be mistaken, judging a book by its cover. They might think you're just a football player, but you get it done in that classroom too. So why don't you bring that up?
Oh, yeah, of course. I came here with a 4.0 GPA. I'm a straight A student. You know, not too many people know about that. So academics is a very huge piece for me.
Yeah, so I think, that's not something that you just get on your own. I think you need to shout out the people behind you for instilling that in you. There's the people who helped you get there along the way. So how about shouting out the people who helped you get to this point?
Oh yeah. My mom and my pops, man, they pushed me to be, the best version of me. So not only on the football field, but in the classroom as well. So I had to do just that.
All right. So, as you look ahead, you talked a lot about Coach Lou. Take me through when you told Coach Lou, when you told Coach Moore. Take me through the moment when you told them that you were going to be a Wolverine. What was that moment like?
Oh man, so yesterday, I'm still at the school, but we're leaving, and I had this feeling in my heart that like this is where I need to be, because really just thinking about it, like Michigan had literally everything I needed: great academics, great football. I had a really tight relationship with the coaches. Like, what more could I ever ask for? So leaving, I kind of gave Coach Moore like that head nod, and then I came home, and then my parents were like, man, like. It's about that time. Like, what are we doing here? So we I've been, my parents, they've been taking me everywhere. So they were exhausted. So,
Well,
so I
man.
had that.
I appreciate y'all. You guys are family. Levi, that's my brother. I know he's in the room. Coach Levi, that's my guy down there. It's love to the end. But now I got to ask you, what's ahead for Simeon? Tell me what we can expect from you guys on the field next year or this year.
Oh, come on. We dominating this year. Like, ain't nobody finna stop us. We've been grinding since January. You know what I'm saying? We've been putting in that work. Now it's time to put everything together.
All right. Now, inquiring minds want to know. We know that,
Yes,
your eyes and your priority is Simeon football. But you also are a Wolverine now. So are you putting your recruiting hat on and you trying to get other guys in the fold for the Wolverines?
Well, honestly, yeah, we have some great talent here, and I think I could use a few more teammates.
Okay. All right. So who should we be checking for? Who are you already recruiting?
You guys know I got a teammate, Brian DeMoss Future, and it's another D lineman that not too many people know about, Corey Randolph. I need to get on him too. Like, we gotta, really the whole D line. Like, y'all need to get on them, because I need some more guys to come with me.
Okay. Well, McHale, congratulations on becoming a Wolverine, man. We'll be checking for you this year. Be down to check you out. Appreciate you for spending this time and sharing this moment with us, man. And like I said, congratulations. We'll see you on the field this year.
Yes, sir.
The Lewis Wolverine in the fold, Chicago Simeons, McHale Blade. Now we bring Allen Trieu back in. Give us the 3-box, Mr. Producer Ben, or the 2-box, I should say. So, Allen Trieu, what is Michigan getting in McHale Blade?
Yeah, so first they're getting a guy who made a ton of plays in the backfield as a sophomore at Hillcrest High School. Then he transferred to Simeon, and as I mentioned, injury kept him from playing a lot last year. But when you look at what Michigan does with their ends, and I did talk to McHale beforehand and asked him how Michigan told him they're planning to use him, and he said, I'll be standing up sometimes, hand down sometimes, but definitely on the edge, because there was some thought early in his career that he might grow into an inside guy just because of the way he was built, but he stayed right around, 255, 260 pounds. And so the plan is to play him on the edge. And when I look at how Michigan used Josiah Stewart last year, how they used Derek Moore, the kind of multiple ways those guys got used, hand in the dirt sometimes, standing up sometimes, I think McHale Blade can do just that.
I think we really need to talk about how from day one, Lou was on McHale. Like, this was like the first guy, one of the first guys he started recruiting. I think that stands out to me, how much of a priority he made McHale from day one.
Yeah, and had some previous relationships there. When he was at Western Michigan, they recruited some of the Kenwood kids you mentioned Coach Turner had at that school. He recruited that area, recruited Hillcrest High School when he was at Western and at some of his other stops. And so already had some of those pre-existing relationships, and then immediately came in and as you said, identified McHale right away. I think he went down and really kind of reset the board for defensive line in the 26 class, and McHale Blade was one of the top guys on that board. And so he immediately built that relationship. And I think that it really made a difference when you get to today and in the last few weeks, because this wasn't a layup. We thought it was down to Michigan and Notre Dame. I thought the school to watch was USC. I thought maybe he might go out to USC and get a little bit swayed by what he sees out there. And it turned out to be Wisconsin last weekend that really almost threw a wrench into the whole thing, because they did a fantastic job with him on that visit, to the point where when he left, there was some talk that Wisconsin had possibly pulled ahead in the race. But that long-time relationship with Lou, and also a long-time relationship with Sharon Moore, who had recruited the city of Chicago when he was an assistant, I think that really made a difference. Michigan's academics made a difference. And then Lou's recent development history. When you look at, we talk about Braden Fisk, I think McHale Blade has more similarities to Marshawn Nealon, who he coached at Western Michigan and then is now with the Cowboys. But I think the quick success he's had with Michigan's defensive line, that made a difference. So the kid, when I talked to him, it really came down to the longtime relationship, but also the fact that we talk about McHale checking boxes. He felt Michigan checked his boxes as far as academics and development.
Yeah, you mentioned two guys. So Michigan fans might not be, you just mentioned two names, and let's not take for granted that all Michigan fans know who Braden Fisk and Marshawn Nealon are. So let's bring them up to speed. You're talking about 2 second-round picks that Lou had at a smaller school in Western Michigan.
Yeah, Braden Fisk ended up transferring to Florida State, being a second-round pick, and was a high candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I'm telling you, having covered that recruitment, that there wasn't another MAC school that really went after Braden Fisk. It's from Michigan City, Indiana. Some schools thought he was an offensive lineman. That wasn't an obvious guy. Even by the standards of one of the top signees in the MAC, Braden Fisk was not considered that coming out of high school. Marshawn Nealon was a very late take for Western, who it's possible, I don't know exactly where he was leaning at that point. It was Western Illinois or Grand Valley State, I think, for Marshawn Nealon before Lou came in. So another guy that wasn't obvious. That's 2 second-round picks that were real needles in a haystack. And so that's those two guys are two of the biggest development and evaluation wins that Lou Esposito's had in his career.
Yeah, and this is an example of a highly rated guy that Lou was able to pull, but I think the mix, I like to say if he recruits a guy, consider him a guy. Whether it's a highly rated guy or an under the radar guy like Tariq Boney, because he's shown that he just knows who guys are. So he just has that kind of eye, and he can develop them.
Well, he did that last year a little bit with Benny Patterson and Travis Moulton. Those guys became kind of higher ranked national guys, and Benny ended up having a bunch of offers, but they were not obvious guys throughout the process either. And I think, I think what got what Lou also looks for in guys he can develop is the guys that kind of have that motor and that want to be that way. Braden Fisk had a certain approach to the game. Marshawn Nealon had a certain approach to the game that allowed them to go from what they were to what they are now. I think McHale Blade, when you talk to him and the people around him, has that same kind of mentality. So, I think Lou goes after a top guy on the national board, but he's not afraid to trust his own evaluations. And I think we talk about traits in the evaluation. I think the intangibles are also a big part of that evaluation for him.
Yeah, how about this being a footprint guy, Allen, on the heels of Nick Marshall, right? I mean, it's great that Michigan is able to branch out. They've been grabbing national guys, really going and getting in the SEC's kitchen and making some noise out of region. But, planting the flag and really boxing some teams out in region, I think sends a message too.
Yeah, you mentioned, branching out and trying to get into SEC country, but the SEC has been coming up here the last few years. For defensive linemen, especially in Chicago and Southern teams. Justin Scott recruited heavily by Miami. Nate Marshall, you mentioned, was flipped to Auburn for a time, thought he might go to Texas. So when you go into Chicago, McHale Blade, I mean, he had offers from all over the country, literal coast to the other coast. So when you go recruit a kid from Chicago now, it's not just Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame anymore. It is schools from around the country. Marquise Lightfoot from Kentwood went down to Miami. So there's guys, you know, there's always going to be a battle there. But I think Michigan taking care of that radius and finding that talent from up here. And it's worked out really well whenever Michigan's been able to keep defensive linemen from the Midwest in the Midwest, Kenneth Grant being one of the most famous recent examples. So I think this is an important win, not only because McHale's a great player and he fits what Michigan wants, but also because Michigan's going to be able to keep going into Simeon, which is a talent-ridden high school, and keep going into the city of Chicago also.
We're going to bring Steve Lorenz on here shortly, but I got to bring Brice Marich on before we let you go, since we're talking Midwest. There's a receiver from Fort Wayne, Indiana, just visited last weekend. We got Allen here. Brice, you're here. I'm curious what you guys think, Mr. Guilford. What do you guys think about Michigan's out? We're talking in region, trying to box teams out. And I think it's a lot more difficult when it comes to receive. I mean, when you talk about edge guys, defensive linemen, Michigan has a better case for a McHale Blade, right? It's a lot harder when it comes to making that case for receivers. You got a Bryce Underwood that makes that case a little easier maybe than it was before, but still, compared to some of these other schools that maybe have put some more stats up, that's still a little bit harder case to make. But Michigan going real hard in the paint now. What do you think of Michigan's chances?
Yeah. So first, even for him to visit, because his recruitment was pretty far along by the time Michigan kind of started to turn up the heat a little bit more. And then even recently when he reopened his recruitment, he was committed to Penn State. Right away, you mentioned Michigan, but the official visit didn't get fully set until more recently. So I think Coach Bellamy and the staff have done a great job of working their way into this one. The difference between him and Blade is Blade had, like, as you mentioned, had a relationship with Michigan for a long time. And he had been to campus several times before his official visit. To my knowledge, Jerquaden Guilford had not been to Michigan. It had been a while. If he had been at all, it had been a while before he came back for this official. So he's just kind of getting more familiar with Michigan as a school, as a staff, as a campus. I think that puts them behind. I think they made some progress in catching up this weekend. But I think they're going to end up playing against the guy, whether that's Indiana, whether that's Ohio State. It's possible he could get out of the Big Ten. If I had to guess right now, I think he'll end up somewhere else within the conference.
Yeah, momentum is a crazy thing, though. Can you get the ball rolling? Can McHale Blade give him some momentum, Brice Marich? You know, that's the thing. You just got to get that one to get it started, and Michigan got their one today.
It's a big one. 6'5", 260. I think what's really intriguing too about him, he's got a 84-inch wingspan. So he's got the length, he's got the size, and he's got that, he's intriguing because he molds guys. When you watch him, he overpowers the offensive lineman. But then at the same time, you can see he still has that technique behind his game. So it's very intriguing. But as you said, Sam, I think they're in position right now to land several guys coming off strong official visits. And I think right now the house settlement, I think, was a key turning point in Michigan recruiting. And I'm not saying this in particular decision was due to that, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Allen, before we let you go, and you will, I think, go with me on this, but this is a great way to close you out and bring Steve Lorenz on. I want to shout out our guy, Levi Bradley, because when Levi says, I got a guy, that guy turns out to be a guy. Let me give you some names. Frank Ragnow. Levi said, I got a guy. Frank Ragnow was the guy, was he not? Jamison Williams. Levi said, I got a guy. He was the guy. I mean, I could go down the line, but now he said, McHale Blade, he said, I got a guy. Why would you doubt him? This is another dude.
And before McHale Blade at Hillcrest High School several years before this, he said, you got to come down here and check out a running back at Hillcrest. I'd never been to Hillcrest High School in my years doing this. They said, come down and check out the running back named Bucky Irving. And, he ended up going to Minnesota. I was shocked. I was like, that guy, I can't believe Minnesota pulled that guy, but he's a fantastic player. So I'd been to Hillcrest High School one time prior to McHale Blade, and it was for Bucky Irving, and he called that one too.
Yeah, man. And you know how cold Levi is, man. Man, we went to a Cubs game in Chicago, just driving around the city. Man, he came in the middle of Chicago, drove down some corner street in the middle of Chicago to just come pick me up to take me to my wife. That's a brother right there. Then took me down to Kankakee. You know how far Kankakee is from Chicago?
I don't.
Drove me down to Kankakee. That's a brother for you. Love my guy Levi. Anyway, Allen Trieu, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully, there might be some more fire drills in the future, but we'll see.
This was a fire drill. This was a fire drill.
All
right, Allen. Thanks a lot, man. That was Allen Trieu. He got still back on daddy. We took Allen off of daddy duty. I was on that. Listen, man. So there was a Swing to Cure Diabetes golf outing on the radio show this morning. My son had his 5th grade graduation this morning. If I had missed that, my wife would have divorced me. My son would have been like, you're the worst dad in the world. And then Khary Adams was like, hey, because, we went down to, on the road trip, we went over to see Nick Abrams. And I think Khary had like an injury or something down there. So I couldn't get with him down there. But he said, I'll come after the official visit. And Brice, that was not a plan. I hit Brice from the graduation. And I said, Khary said he wants to come by the studio after his official visit. Brice was like, what? I'm on daddy duty today. And I was like, Brice, he has a flight out. He wants to come by after the official visit. And so we got done with that. Brice is tearing down the studio. I said, Brice, have you torn down the studio yet? Because McHale wants to commit on the show. All of this literally came together. So, people are like, hey, I thought you said 6:30. Folks, we were literally putting all of this together on the fly today. All of this came together unplanned.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And props to the guys in the back that you don't see, Lance and Ben and all now.
Lance, Ben, Matt the Miz Mizler at TKA. So many people helping pull it together. Wouldn't be able to do it without all these people. And my wife, who has not divorced me after all of these years. So I got to give a huge shout out to my wife. So let's bring Steve Lorenz on. Let's put Steve Lorenz on the screen. Steve, how you doing, my brother?
What's up, guys?
Hey,
How's
man. McHale Blade. I think we have felt like Michigan was in really, really good shape, but you always had to be, leery of the threat of Notre Dame. And then, of course, Allen was talking about USC being a threat, but Michigan was able to close this deal.
Yeah, I think, it felt, mostly this was, Michigan and Notre Dame, like every cycle, there's about 5 or 6. There's another one tomorrow with Alister Valejo that could go Michigan's way, could go Notre Dame's way. It feels like up front, these two schools recruit against each other as much as any two schools in the country, I feel like, as far as head-to-heads go. So, Michigan gets one from the Irish here. I think they pretty much beat Notre Dame. Was also really trying hard with Matt Ludwig too before he committed. They were a school that had really put in a lot of effort with him as well. Biggest thing for me, Blade offers a little bit of versatility up front, but this cycle going into next, Chicago is going to become one of the 2 or 3 most important areas in the country for Michigan on the trail, with the talent coming through at Mount Carmel specifically next year. There's going to be multiple staff members spending a lot of time in Chicago. So the more headway Michigan makes in that area, I think is the better. Just gives them more visibility, more reason to be back in the area doing some recruiting. So nice to beat Notre Dame. I kind of in their own backyard a little bit, but But Blade's a great prospect as well. Obviously, that's the most important thing. So nice addition for the class.
Yeah, I know there was a bit of a lull, after the couple of tight ends. And I think Michigan fans were again, and understandably antsy. You expect for this to be the time for Michigan to be picking up commitments once the official visits pick back up. And when there weren't any coming off of that first weekend, it was like, what's going on? And my speculation, and this is just mine, I thought it was the NIL piece. And just stay with me for a minute. The NIL settlement, I thought, really threw a wrench in whatever momentum I thought Michigan was on the verge of building. And here's why. You had this revenue sharing model that all schools were going to be or are going to be bound by to a certain extent, where they're going to be splitting roughly $22 million per school. That's the cap per school. And whatever percentage of that you're going to allocate to football. At Michigan, I think it's like 70% is going to football, right? And so that is how much Michigan is going to pay directly to football. Well, some schools have been telling kids that settlement is not going to pass. And so basically, there is no cap. There is no cap. Michigan was out recruiting based on that revenue share projection. Like, hey, this settlement is going to pass, and this is how NIL is going to look, and so this is the structure that's going to. And so coming off that first week, their NIL projections were looking different than some of the schools who were saying, hey, there is not going to be a settlement. And you had some kids like, what? Wait, didn't you just have Brice Underwood last year? And some schools are like, they're talking Greek over here, and you're over here talking like you're a third world country. This is not the same. So what's going on? Right? So now this again is my speculation on the matter. I think it's educated speculation, but I really think that kind of stymied some momentum. Would that have allowed them to pick up some commitments? I don't know. But I feel like they would have had a better chance, Brice. Now, I at least feel like this kind of gets things moving back at the pace with some of those top-tiered recruits that I thought they were on the verge of. Like some recruits that I think people didn't really give Michigan a shot at. Some of those guys in the South that people are writing them off for, I think they are back in really significant play for again.
For me personally, I'm looking at linebackers. You mentioned a guy that just took a visit, Braden Rouse, one of the top linebackers in the country from Georgia. He was just up on campus, had a fabulous visit, really enjoyed his time with Coach BJ. Another guy talking about flipping guys, Shadarius Toodle, Auburn commit, top 247 linebacker. He's got options. He's looking at Georgia. He's obviously committed to Auburn, but he just took a visit to Michigan. And who knows, if Michigan does decide to play ball and maybe show different projections, who knows what his mind might do. He's got family in Michigan. He really likes the coaching staff. And a big thing for him is the developmental piece and the scheme. He likes both those extremely well at Michigan. And if that's when they really, really push him, I think that's when we could see the tides, turn for sure.
Listen, I think Michigan has a better shot at Shadarius Toodle than a lot of people give him credit for.
Get a sticky note.
A lot of people
get a sticky note.
Certainly than Auburn gives him credit for. And if I'm Michigan, I actually like that he's about to visit. You know how Baylor gets down. Baylor actually said we buy. Steve, you remember when they said we buy players, right? So he goes to Baylor, he goes to Auburn coming up, and then there's like a week or two or there's a period in there before he makes the decision. So there's like a holding period. So you're going to have an opportunity if you're Michigan, to go back in to talk to him after he comes off of those visits. That's the time.
Yeah.
That's the time where it's really going to be decided what he's going to do. And I think they have a real shot, because the thing that stuck out to me going to see him is that I thought that distance was the thing. I thought that he didn't want to be far away from home. And that wasn't the case. It's just comfort. And that sounds like the same thing, and it's not. You know, he was most comfortable with Auburn because he had been there the most, because it's closest to home. He had been there like 6 or 7 times. He was really, really comfortable with the players on the team. But once he had been to Michigan, he got comfortable with the coaches. He really likes Coach BJ. That comfort level with Michigan really amped up, and he's enamored with the big time spectacle of Michigan. I think the comfort gap has narrowed, and now that he's more comfortable with Michigan, the distance factor just is non-existent. I think, you know, they just had to bridge the gap in with the players, and I think that's kind of come along too.
And I would point out a guy too that we just had in studio, Sam, Khary Adams. I think Michigan has a better shot than I anticipated. After coming in studio, I feel a little better about their chances as well. I mean, he raved about Lamar Morgan and just how his development and taking a 2-star prospects into NFL draft picks. And he mentioned he's not looking at the school. He's looking at the particular coach at his position and how he develops guys. And I think that was a telling point for me. One thing that really stuck out as well.
So Steve, here's how I kind of look at NIL, and you tell me if you kind of go with this. You know, what I've seen Sean McGee do is kind of slot based on position. Michigan, I like to say, doesn't spend indiscriminately, but based on position, they will really go all out. So quarterbacks, they'll go all out, right? Left tackles, they'll go all out. You know, I wonder if we'll see that at corner. Shamari Earls, they went all out and took Shamari Earls from Georgia. So based on where they are with Khary Adams and maybe to a lesser extent, or maybe not, I don't know, Davon Benjamin. Those are the 2 highest rated guys left on the board. And because those are the only 2 like guys of that ilk left on the board, I mean that kind of makes it easy to figure out where the spend is, at least to me. So if you're gonna go all out at one of those high value positions, it kind of makes it easy to know where to slide your chips, if you will. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other position, Sam, I mean, I think you guys would agree. You look at them getting Justice Haynes, the top running back out of the portal, and now they're right in the race for Savion Hyder, the number 1 running back in the prep ranks this year. It feels like running backs is a position that they kind of like to prioritize as well. I mean, you don't get the number 1 transfer and not in the race for the number 1 running back if you're not making that somewhat of a priority too. So yeah, the other position, obviously quarterback, left tackle. I think cornerback is way, way up there. You can never have enough good defensive backs, especially when you're playing Ohio State, Oregon, Texas on the schedule occasionally. So yeah, I mean, where it gets interesting for me is, you know, you talk about Khary Adams or a Davon Benjamin, because Michigan's obviously not the only school that's going to be going all out for these guys, right? I mean, they're the top in the country for a reason. How do you balance that between making sure you don't let other guys that you might like slip, you know, or make a decision before maybe, you know, if a Khary Adams or a Davon Benjamin's not quite ready to make a choice, still talking to 4 or 5 other schools, you know, how do you kind of keep 2 or 3 other guys at those positions warm enough, you know, if you're not 100% ready to take that commitment on a given day, you know, I mean, and that's right. And that's where the NIL and the money stuff is so fascinating to me, because it's like, you know, that's why I do not envy these coaches and these general like at all, because it's just, I mean, you're seeing some of the, you know, it's wacky. I do 100% agree though about the settlement. You know, I thought it was peculiar how many kids committed after the first real big week of official visits, like across the country, where it's like you got 4 or 5 other schools waiting to host you. From a business standpoint, why would you make a choice after the first week? Now, to be fair, we did talk about Michigan hasn't gotten any guy. They got Blade today, but they didn't have a big week on May 30th or June 6th. But none of those major guys have committed elsewhere though, right? They're still out there, but a lot of other kids committed somewhere kind of early. I mean, I think USC added like 12 more, like they have like 47 kids in their class at this point. Like, I just don't know from a business, like if I'm a kid getting recruited, I'm not sure why I'm deciding before June 30th.
I can tell you why. I'm not call it educated speculation again. I'm not saying any names, not saying any schools. I'm just telling you what I heard. But you got a lot of guys trying to beat that July 1st date. And you got schools kind of throwing out big numbers first saying, oh, the settlement isn't going to pass. But if it does pass, if we get you down for a deal before July 1st, get you in on the signing bonus before that time, especially if you come from one of those states where you get NIL in high school, well, here you go. Commit right now. And voila. Right? So you can see why that might, why that might be enticing for a guy to commit early.
Yeah.
So, you get how the game is played. You get how some of these schools are really going about it.
Yep. So, yeah, how Michigan will balance that, because, again, I mean, we're talking about linebacker. You guys talk about Toodle. You still got Nick Abrams. You got Rouse. You got Kenneth Goodwin coming up this weekend. You got who was the other guy? They hosted another one. This Kelvin Thomas. And there's like 5 or 6, right? There's like 5 or 6 names at that spot. I think most regular fans who don't even follow would be happy with 4 or 5 of those guys, right? So, and they're kind of in that position at pretty much every spot, I feel like right now, where there's a good solid like 5, 6 guys that I think people would be ecstatic with. And how Michigan, like you talked, like the Adams Benjamin stuff it's fascinating. I don't want to mention any of the other names they're recruiting to kind of make them not sound as like they're as important, but those are the top ranked, just strictly from a ranking standpoint. Those are the top ranked guys. Both those guys have Georgia, Texas, like all the big name schools are still after him. So, how does Michigan kind of balance that without, ended up missing on a few more of those guys that maybe they would have gotten if they,
Yeah, and those are going to be decided. You talked about not wanting to miss out on other options waiting. You also have the fortune, if you want to call it that, of those guys deciding relatively soon. Khary's going to decide here in the summer. Davon is too.
And he made it clear. Khary made it clear. You asked him, you said, is there any possibility he could commit after official? He said, nope. And I don't know if I should give away the date, but it's going to be this summer, early summer. So,
yeah. Davon's coach said, hey, he's going to get it out of the way before the season is going to be in the summer. He didn't want to give away the date, but he said it's coming this summer. So, you want to be in position to get it done. And if you go about this the right way, I don't know if you got the coin to get them both, but
here's the other thing. It's June 9th, and people have hit me up about recruiting rankings and I know Steve knows this, Sam, you know this. How many guys did they flip at the end of last cycle?
Mm-hmm.
And not only guys, we're talking about top end guys. And I think at this point, I'm not going to freak out about recruiting until it gets closer to signing day. That's just now my premise and how I go about handling recruiting.
Well, I like to play spades. I don't know if y'all play spades. But
I can play.
when
little something.
in spades, you know, you bid, right? You bid how many books you're gonna get, and when you get set, you don't make the number of books you bid, right? Well, a lot of these schools are gonna get set, and if Michigan is in position down the line, you could come back when some of these schools renege on their deals. That is going to happen. Mark my words. Some of these schools are going to renege. It is inevitable. So be ready if you're Michigan. I think there is benefit to being responsible, to not being frivolous with how you're throwing out these deals. You got to be competitive. People are right. You cannot be, being the lowest offer on every single guy.
You got to be
not Michigan.
You got to be in the ballpark.
You got to be in a ballpark. And so I think what Michigan does is they say, look, we aren't gonna, spend on everyone like some of these schools. We are going to be judicious on certain guys. We're going to go hard in the paint. You got to be able to do that if you're going to compete at the highest level. But just be aware, Steve, that all these schools who are just throwing all this money for every single guy, and they're gonna have to pay the piper at the end of the day. And when time comes to pay that check, some of these schools aren't gonna be able to pay that check.
Right. Yeah. No. Right. No. I can think of a few schools that fit the bill. I may have even mentioned one in a few minutes ago. But yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't envy these guys. It's just a whole different ball game. It's not. I don't know if it's as fun to follow either anymore. It's just a whole. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's a whole different deal. But no, Michigan, as they have pretty consistently throughout all of these major changes as far as recruiting goes, made more of the long play, and I think it's been the right play every time so far. Right? I mean, people want results now, but nobody's looking past the trees, to the end of the forest or whatever that phrase is. Nobody's, everyone wants that instant gratification. They want commitments now. Michigan playing their cards right. Like you said, Sam, the Spades analogy was perfect. So, it's just a matter of exercising a little bit of patience. I mean, their two biggest recruiting weekends are the next two. I mean, these are the ones where I think you really might start to see some real movement. So, but yeah, again, props to Michigan. Their boards at like I said, at every position, there's a handful of guys that I think they're in position striking distance for. And now these last few weeks of June, we'll probably really know more about what this class is going to end up looking like.
So let's look ahead. Let's give the people something to be excited about other than the deal over on the MichiganInsider.com, because now that we're through the season of guys coming in studio, that was, I mean, when I talk about, man, the season of guys coming in studio, man, it was a gauntlet. Because
it was a few.
Listen, every time guys came in studio, we got to put the studio up, we got to take the studio down. We got to put the studio up, we got to take the studio down. So, and then we gotta edit the videos, we got to put them together. Producer Ben and producer Lance, that is an undertaking, but it was worth it. And it's going to become more of a well-oiled machine the more we do it. And kids want to come on. That's the other thing. More and more kids are like, can we come to the studio? Well, I was like, okay, that's exactly what we wanted to happen, right? So that's going to become more of a thing as we move forward. But now that we're through that, the season of dimes is over, we can get back into the routine of the Recruiting Insider as we get into the summer. So let's give people something exciting to look forward to. You got 60% off over on the Michigan Insider to look forward to as we heat up their recruiting season. What guys can people look forward to coverage on? What guys do you think are hot for Michigan right now, Brice?
For me personally, I 4-star wide receiver Travis Johnson. I know he just took a OV to Penn State. He's got a great relationship, though, with Ron Bellamy, the wide receivers coach here. He's been up to campus several times. That's a guy, Sam, that stopped by studio as well. He really likes Michigan. A big thing for him, shocker, Bryce Underwood, quarterback, 5-star. He wants to see how he's going to do. But meeting him in person on that last spring trip up to Ann Arbor, he had a great time talking with him. His mom absolutely loves Michigan as well. That's one for me to watch. And in the same state, another guy I'm watching closely that I got to see when I went down there, Andre Clark. I think he's a guy that's a phenomenal corner prospect that Lamar Morgan has done a great job with. He's, big fan of Will Johnson. That's a guy that he's kind of watched his tape, kind of emulated his game after, he really likes a lot of the traits and how he plays. And he just likes Coach Wink Martindale's defense, that scheme. That's been a thing that's really resonated that I've talked with a lot of guys is how am I going to defend the defense? And when Coach Wink shows the lineup and the line of all the stars he's coached, like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and all these guys, it stands out to them. So those are two guys off the top of my head. And I know this is a little off topic, but I have to give some flowers to Steve Kasula on staff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy wrapped up his position group in 2 days. And it's insane. I know Steve probably has more intel on just the job he's been doing, but that has been, I don't think that's been talked about enough, how he literally wrapped up his position group in 2 days. It's incredible.
Yeah, so Matt Ludwig was TE1 for months. Really since they offered just about, so that one was a big one. Ludwig is about as much of a Michigan, like a fit on and off the field as you're going to find. Not a kid, I think, who was really going to be heavily wooed by like schools that they didn't actually have a good relationship with. You know what I mean? So like the old school stuff was really important in that recruitment. And then Mason Bonner was a kid out of Colorado, out of Denver. So I believe Michigan went down to see him once, offered him. And then I believe Sharon Moore went down the second time with Kasula. And then he became a top target the entire time. Now he's much more of a high ceiling, I don't want to say project, but he's a guy who kind of plays more wide receiver right now than he does tight end, right? So there's going to be a little bit of work there to be done, but the tools are there for him to make a big impact at some point. I think Michigan at one of these years wants to try to fit 3 tight ends in a class. I feel like there's probably been about 9 classes since I've been doing this where like people are like, the idea is like, yeah, if they could fit 3 in, they'll take 3. But once you get 2 in, it's always hard to get a third guy to commit. So the focus will be on 2027 now at tight end anyway. And then I think what the other benefit there, you'd mentioned Steve Kasula, is he could start to help the rest of the staff out with some other recruitments as well, right? Because again, you got your 2 guys at his position are locked up. I wouldn't be surprised to see him helping with the receiver and running back, like pretty much anybody on the offensive side of the ball. I could see him being a guy at least involved on the periphery a little bit more in some of those recruitments. So yeah, no, it's June 9th or whatever it is today, and tight end is done for the cycle, and now you can focus on 2027. So great work for sure.
Yeah, there are a few guys that I'm excited about. I think that Michigan is in great shape with Nick Abrams. I think they've really been trending there for some time. He's one of those guys that I think really didn't have Michigan high on his list until he came on that unofficial in the spring and was blown away. And they've just been going up ever since. I think that his bond with Brian Jean-Marie is one of the strongest on the board. I think that the school, to me, that is the most to fear is the farthest away from home, Oregon. As much as Georgia is linebacker in this day and age, I think that's in part the reason why they might not be the biggest threat. There's so many linebackers. There's so many linebackers down there. Not that Nick I don't think that he's scared of competition, but look at the numbers. So, you can be a great linebacker, and still not play right away down here. Whereas you could be a great linebacker and play earlier at Alabama, Oregon, or Michigan. And I just think that the links, the ties, the pull at Oregon and Michigan, at least in my opinion, is just stronger. And so can they beat Oregon? This is just my opinion. I'm liking where Michigan is in that race right now. You mentioned Calvin Thomas. The interesting thing there is he has an uncle in Ipsy, but he's talking a lot about edge right now. I don't know how much of he looks at the edge recruiting for Michigan. They just picked up Blade. I don't know how much, and they're recruiting Trent. All the edges that Michigan is recruiting, I don't know how much of a hindrance that is in that recruitment. But the corner spot that we're talking about, I like where they are I'm going to talk about Dorian Barney. I like where they are with Khary Adams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to feel like they have continued to climb that list too. I think they're one of the top couple there on that list right now. I think personally, it's Michigan and Notre Dame. That's just my opinion. He didn't say that. You guys will be able to watch the interview and judge for yourselves. I think it's going to be a nip tuck. It could be a tug of war down the stretch, but I think they're in great shape. I think Lamar Morgan has done a great job. But how many corners can Michigan stack in this class? It may come down to finances, because another guy, I know he has crystal balls elsewhere, but he's going to come on a visit in a couple of weeks. I went down to the Peach State to see him, and another guy who has a great relationship with Lamar Morgan is Dorian Barney.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I think he has crystal ball projections to Penn State. I know he's originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. Listen, fellas, I think Michigan has the last visit for a reason. I think it's an ideal spot to be in. So that's a guy that I'm excited about. So there's a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks.
I mean, at Penn State has at least 6 defensive backs committed in this class right now, at least 6, and they're still going after Khary Adams too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, as much as Penn State has always negatively recruited Michigan over the years, you think Michigan's got to be chirping to both kids about how many defensive backs they're taking right now. So can't hurt.
Yeah, and then listen. Khary talked about this as well. He said, I could go there and compete for a starting position day one. And that's not coach speak. I mean, Michigan needs corners, multiple corners in this class, right? To come in and compete for a starting spot. And even if you don't get a starting spot, you're going to compete for a spot in the rotation. You're going to play if you can play, right? So they need a lot of corners. That's a good recruiting pitch. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about in this recruiting cycle. And by the way, Steve, there's a great deal going on, isn't there, over on the MichiganInsider.com?
Yeah, so 60% off for the next. We'll probably get extended for a couple days, since I think our news was a little more backlogged than some of the other sites on the network. But yeah, 60%. I think only the Cyber Monday deal is better than the 60%, but right now is the heart of recruiting season. So I'm actually about to post something pretty interesting on the board here when we get off. Like, not something I expected necessarily to be posting. So for a little bit of a teaser there.
Yeah. I'm gonna get in on some things with Toodle and Nick Abrams too. They're pretty interesting as well.
Perfect.
So
Good.
In better shape with those guys than I think people, especially Toodle. Like, people are like, they don't have a chance to flip an Auburn guy from Mobile, Alabama. And they do.
Right.
They really do. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm just telling you, there's a legit chance. And the last time I said there's a legit chance, and y'all said, no, there's not. Didn't some fireworks go off? Now, I'm not telling you that there's fireworks guaranteed to go off here. I'm just telling you there's a legit chance. So listen to what I'm saying, y'all. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not making this up. We're back.
Good time to sign up.
Yeah, it's time to sign up. All right, fellas and ladies, because there are ladies in it. It was a lady who came on and said, "Hey, I'm watching the whole show on Facebook. We appreciate you." There are over 3,000 people watching the show live, and this was an impromptu announcement. So we appreciate you coming on live like this on short notice. That's a lot of love, and we appreciate you guys showing the love like that. Show the love all the time over on the MichiganInsider.com. That's where you can find us all the time. And we will see you over there on TMI, and we will see you weekly here on the Michigan Recruiting Insider. We'll see you next time, folks.